Hi everyone, my name is Jenny Harrison. I'm the founder of Teach Me GIS. That's me, a GIS training center based in Houston. I've been working with and teaching GIS for about 30 years. Today, in a quick 15 minutes, I'm going to tell you a little about Arcade, the new scripting language for ArcGIS Pro. First, let me explain what Arcade is. Arcade is an expression language that's used in ArcGIS for labeling, field calculations, pop-ups, and symbology. A lot of the places we used to use VBScript, JavaScript, and Python back in the ArcMap days. It's not a standalone programming language. You don't write new tools, add-ins, or apps with Arcade. And it's not a replacement for Python, JavaScript, or C++ for development. Arcade is just an expression language. Arcade is used in ArcGIS Pro, ArcGIS Online, and Portal. It's not available in the legacy ArcMap application. So let's get in and look at Arcade. First of all, let's just start with why another language. I mean, we already had VBScript, JavaScript, and Python, all of which are still supported in Pro. Oh, and we've had SQL for database queries forever. So why do we need another language? Well, the deal is Arcade is cross-platform. What I mean is Arcade is a lightweight yet powerful expression language used securely across the entire platform and on many different device types. You can write an Arcade label expression in ArcGIS Pro and publish the layer as a web map service to ArcGIS Online or Portal, and then put it on a web map and open that map in ArcGIS Field Maps or Collector, and the label expression will work and look the same as you push that feature service from app to app, device to device, and operating system to operating system. So whether the end user is looking at this collector on Windows, on a Windows device, an Android device, or an iOS device, the label is going to look the same. Oh, and Arcade adds new functionality that we didn't have with the expression languages back in ArcMap. You can create symbology that is based on on-the-fly calculations and pop-ups that can do on-the-fly spatial analysis. What I mean is, if I open Pro up over here, you see when I click on one, these are police districts around Louisville, Kentucky, along with some address points. So when I click on one of these police district polygons, I get a pop-up that tells me the number of addresses in that police district, but that number of addresses doesn't live in my attribute table. That's actually being calculated on the fly with Arcade. It's figuring out how many points fall inside that polygon and calculating that for me on the fly. I'll show you how the code looks a little bit later in this talk. So we can use Arcade in our normal places like label expressions and field calculations, but we also can use it for fancy symbology and configuring pop-ups. Let's look at the basic syntax before we go any further. First of all, Arcade is not case sensitive, and you'll usually see a semicolon at the end of the lines of code, but it's actually optional on one-liners. If your script involves multiple lines of code, like an if-then expression would, then you use the word return to pass the final values back to the calling routine, back to the pop-up, the label, the field calculation, or the symbology. Just like Python, you use a plus sign for string concatenation. And just like Python, Arcade makes smart assumptions, it's called implicit typecasting, about the data type to determine whether the plus sign should do math or should do string concatenation. In this case, because I'm passing it 3 strings, it knows I mean to add these strings up. So it's the API, that's an identifier for some oil and gas wells. It's an API number plus a space plus the operator name. So this is actually an example from oil and gas wells. So it's an American Petroleum Institute identifier plus a dash plus the operator of that well. API and operator are simply columns in the attribute table. We always preface the column name with $feature in Arcade. Arcade, what about the Python \n or Visual Basic VB newline equivalent. In Arcade, you use the \n just like in Python. You can also use text formatting .newline. So when you're looking around online, you'll see people using both of those. So that's kind of the basic syntax, right? It's not that different from Python, except for this $feature bit. Arcade has all of the common mathematical and logical operators you've probably seen in Python and VB script, like the plus, the minus, the multiply, the divide, even the modulus. Look that up if you haven't heard of it. It's really cool for labeling index contours. And it has Boolean and logical operators. So instead of a single equal sign, you use 2 equal signs for comparison, and this is your not equal to. This is your and your or. So let's see how this fits together. So the idea is, the big difference is that for every column name, you have to preface it with $feature, okay? $feature is actually a global variable that represents the feature that's being processed. For example, the feature you clicked on when you get a pop-up. So you use $feature before field names to reference the field values. You can think of $feature like a pointer to the current record. $feature.api again, plus a new line, plus $feature.operator. Finish it up with a semicolon. So this is a common sort of a label expression you might use. There are other global variables. Use $map and $layer to get access to features from multiple layers all at once. There are functions that know how to work with $map and $layer, and we'll talk about 1 or 2 of them in just a little bit. So what will look different to you then are the Arcade global variables, but this is also what makes Arcade so useful and so powerful. So Arcade is used in labeling, symbology, pop-ups, and field calculations. So here's a labeling example. I'm taking the county name, so $feature.county name, plus a new line, plus the population. So it's going to label with the county name and then the population underneath it. Here's an example from symbology, and it's using a conditional statement because Arcade supports if-then conditional statements. It says if, this is looking at traffic volumes on roads, and it says we've only got an annual traffic volume for our roads, but we're trying to see if the average daily traffic volume is greater than 10,000 cars. But only thing we have in the table is an annual traffic column. So we say if $feature.annual traffic volume divided by 365, that gives us a average daily traffic volume. If $feature.annual traffic volume divided by 365 is greater than 10,000, then return high daily traffic. Else return low to normal traffic. So what you're going to see in the unique value legend here are 2 entries, high daily traffic and low to normal traffic, even though you don't have a daily traffic column in your table. And I'll show you an example of that in a minute. Here's an example for pop-ups. Maybe we've got a shape length column, but it's in feet, and we want our pop-up to display the length in miles. So our pop-up expression will be feature.shape length divided by 5280, which is the conversion from feet to miles. We could do the same thing as a field calculation if we wanted to actually put the new length in a database table, right? We could use the field calculator to calculate the the length in miles is equal to the feature.shape length divided by 5280. So those are some calculations. They should look fairly familiar to you if you've done things like this in Python or VB script back in ArcMap or in Pro. The syntax is not that different. So let me show you a couple of examples here. First, we'll look at a simple field calculation and then a label example and a symbology example. So back in Pro, again, I'm looking at that data with Louisville police districts and address points. In the attribute table for police districts, there's a descriptor and a beat number. Suppose you want to combine them into a new field called full descriptor. I've already added the column here. And while combining them, you want to force that description into all uppercase. You can do that quickly in the field calculator with an Arcade expression. So you'll just right click here and go to field calculator, or sorry, calculate field. You'll make sure that you set your expression type at the top to arcade. We can stretch this out a bit so you can see the expression better. And then you'll just build the expression. So you want full descriptor is equal to the uppercase version of the description. You can use this little filter up here to get just the string functions, or sorry, the text functions. And you'll find the upper function in there. So double click upper, I'll put my mouse inside the parentheses and click the column name that I want to force into uppercase. And now I'll concatenate that with the beat field. So I'll add a plus and I'll add the beat. And see, it puts the dollar feature in there for you automatically. And then you'll probably want to put a space or something in between them. So I'll put a space dash space, again concatenated with the plus sign. So there's the full expression. Then you'll click the check mark. No, sorry, let me pull this up. Then you'll click apply to have this expression actually calculate for you. And so you can see in the new field, the field is populated with the district name forced into uppercase and then the dash and the beat number. Okay, so now suppose you didn't actually want to make a change to the table, but you still wanted to label the map with this information. So I'm going to go back out here and clear this field out to pretend like we don't have it. And let's say pretend we don't have write permission to this field, but I still want to label with the police beat name and the beat. The police district name and the beat. So what I'm going to do in that case is I'm going to go up here to the labeling tab, and I'm going to, over here where I can choose a field, instead of choosing a field, I'm going to hit this expression button. In the expression button, I'm going to build an expression very similar to the one we just built in the field calculator a minute ago. So I'm going to go over here and get my text functions. I'm going to find the upper function. So I'm going to force the district name into uppercase, and I'm going to add to it. This time instead of adding a dash, I'm actually going to put a new line in there. So that way we'll get the district name on the top and the beat number on the bottom. So a new line is just \n plus the beat. And then I'll actually also put the word beat in there. So you'll get the district name and then a new line, the word beat and a colon, and then the beat number. Then you can hit the check mark to make sure that you've typed that in properly. And then you say apply. I'll turn the address points off so you can see it a little better. So when I turn on the labels, you should see the beat number, the district name forced into uppercase, and then a new line, and then beat number. It takes a little bit longer to draw with the arcade expression being evaluated the first time through. So there you go. It's a little messy, but because I'm zoomed out so far, but you can see it's got the police district name and then the beat number below it. Okay, so now let's look at a symbology example. I'm going to turn off these beats for a second. I'm going to look at these address points. The address point layer has all the address points for the entire greater Louisville area. Suppose you've been tasked with doing some data QC on the addresses along a single street. We're going to look at one called Preston Street. Now, Preston Street's really long, and it goes basically north to south throughout the entire region. Let's suppose that today you're just going to work on the address points on Preston Street in a single zip code. And to start, you want to make a map to show those points in that one zip code, make them stand out. So here's the code to do it. So I'll turn the beats are off. I'll go up here to the Symbology tab. Sorry, my zoom buttons are in the way. I'll go to Appearance and I'll go to Symbology, and I'll say I want to make a unique value legend. But instead of choosing a column to color on, I'm going to make an expression with this little green button here. The language for symbology expressions is always arcade. So the expression is going to be this. It's going to use a conditional statement, and if you've never programmed, I know this might be new to you, but just want to show you kind of how quickly it works. My expression is going to say if the street name for these addresses, oops, golly, sorry, went into the whole wrong data set. I'm going to go down to the address points and go to symbology, unique values. Again, instead of choosing a column, I'm going to hit expression. And I'm going to build the expression if the street name column, and I'll just double click to get it in there, if the street name equal Preston, and I happen to know that Preston is all uppercase in this table, if street name equal Preston, then if the zip code equal, and I'll just pick one, there's a zip code 40213, then return, check these Preston Street addresses. Okay, so those are the ones I'm interested in that I want to check. So I'm going to make those guys stand out as one different color. Otherwise, else, return, yeah, it's Preston Street, but I don't need to do anything with it. Okay. And then I'll have to close off my if statement. So you notice around each if condition, we have a set of curly braces, an open and a closed curly brace. So this is read is if the zip code is equal to 40213, then do this. Else, and I get a set of curly braces around the else expression as well, else return this. Now notice I don't take into account, I don't do anything if the street name is not Preston, because I don't even want those points to show up. I only want to show Preston Street addresses, and I want to emphasize the ones that are in zip code 40213. So I'll hit the check to make sure the expression is valid, and I say okay. I'm going to do a couple other things over here. So you'll see what this is going to return is two unique values for me, the Preston Street addresses that need checked and those that don't need checked. And because unique value legends always do this, I'll get that class of all other values as well. Okay, and I don't want to see all other values. I don't want to see streets if they're not Preston Street. So I'm going to go up here to the more and uncheck that option to show other values. So now I'm good. I should only see, check these Preston Streets. I'm going to make these guys stand out. Maybe I'll make them bright yellow. And the rest of Preston Street, I'll just leave them gray. And so now, there you go. I'll close the expression builder. And now you can see Preston Street. That didn't come out gray, did it? It came out kind of pink. Let me turn that to gray. So now you can see there's Preston Street. There are all the addresses along Preston Street, and these here in the middle are the ones in that zip code. The yellow doesn't show up very good on that background. Sorry, I'm going to change them one more time, make them red so you can see them better. So I'm doing an if condition. I'm checking some values on the fly before I color them, right? I'm classifying the data using an expression. And there are ways to do this with unique value many fields, but it would take a little bit more work. That code is really easy to write once you get used to it. Okay, so that's just a couple simple examples. And that's not too hard, right? But everything I've shown you so far really just replaces what we could already do with Python or VB script. We'll accept the symbology part. But that's cool, right? But now let's, what makes Arcade so powerful are the set of functions available in the language, some of which do little bits on the fly of spatial analysis. There are some functions that probably look familiar to you if you've done much with these field calculations in ArcMap, like the upper function I showed you earlier. And there's also mean and min and max. And there are date functions like today and date diff and month. These are things that we already do. But there are also some data functions and geometry functions in Arcade that make Arcade so special. Now here's a whole page full of them, and we can't really read through all of them, but I want you to notice this set of geometry functions. See this thing called intersection and this one called buffer? These are doing these are functions that'll do little bits of geoprocessing on the fly on your data without actually making new data, right? So I'm going to show you how this works. So let me show you, for example, how that pop-up that I used earlier in the presentation was created. So consider this popped-up customization that when you click on a polygon, it tells you how many points from some other layer fall inside that polygon, like how many address points are in each one of the police districts. So as I click on the police district polygon, it gives me that number of addresses. So I'm going to go back over to Pro. So you're seeing the police districts again. I've turned off the address points because there's so many of them. Just turn them on for a second so you can see. It's a lot, right? So to make this work, I'm going to turn off the address points just to speed things up. But what I'm going to do is I'll right-click on the polygon layer and I'll go to Configure Pop-ups. By default, what this pop-up does, if I click on the Fields button here, it shows me that by default, it labels with all of the fields in this attribute table. I had previously, when I was playing with this earlier, I had turned that default off and turned on just a few columns that I want to see. One of those columns, if you notice, is a custom expression. So the way I created that custom expression is I just went down here to Expressions, to the Expressions button, and I said I want to create a new expression. Now the expression looks like this. It's kind of a mess, so I'm gonna take it out and build it again from scratch so you can see how it works. I'll even put a little comment in here. Anything that starts with a / that you see in Arcade is just a comment. So I'm going to put a comment that says what this does. It gets a count for all addresses in a police district. So then I'm going to create, I could do this all in one line, but it's hard to learn. You know, if you're a new user, it's hard to understand it all. So I'm going to create a little variable called address layer, and I'm going to set it equal to this function called feature set by name $map. That's my global variable. It says look at the current map, and feature set by name function says go and grab one of the data sets that I'm interested in and put it in memory as a feature set that I can then process. So this line of code says go get the Jefferson County, Kentucky address points, grab them all, put them in memory because I'm about to do something with them. So that's saved in memory as my address layer. And then I'm going to create another variable called address count that's set equal to the count function. Well, let me do this first. The first function is intersects. And I'm going to say intersect that address layer that's sitting in memory with $feature. Remember, I told you $feature is a global variable that holds the thing I just clicked on. So $feature will be the polygon that I just clicked on, and this says intersect it with the address layer. And then I'm going to pass the result of that into a count function because all I really want is to know how many there are. So I'll nest those two functions, right? So it intersects the address layer with the $feature that I just clicked on, go count up how many features were intersected, and then return that into a variable called address count, and then I'll just return that variable, address count. And I'll close it all up with a semicolon so Arcade knows I'm done. Okay, so I'll check this. It says it's okay. I'll say okay. And now I have a new expression out here. Oh, wait a minute. Let me do one more thing in this edit. Notice up here, I've given my address and my new calculated field a name. I've called it num addresses, and I've given it a title. This is what's actually going to show up in the pop-up. It's going to say number of addresses, then it's going to put the count in there. So I'll say okay, and if I go back and I look at the fields again that are being displayed, it's the few fields that I chose plus that number of addresses field that I just created, that pseudo field that I've created on the fly. So that's all it takes. So now I'll close this guy up, and when I click on a polygon, it gives me the number of addresses in that polygon. So it's, even though they're not visible, right, but they have to be on the map. Okay, so that's a tiny little introduction to Arcade. I hope you found this talk interesting and useful. Now go play with Arcade. Reach out to me if I can help you with anything. Thanks for watching.